Welcome to the Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast, where timeless biblical truths meet modern leadership. We are thrilled to have you join us on this journey of exploring how biblical principles can guide us in leading with wisdom, integrity, and purpose. Whether you're leading in the church, your workplace, or your community, this podcast is designed to inspire, challenge, and equip you for the road ahead. Let's dive into today's conversation and discover how Scripture shapes the way we lead.
Welcome back to Biblical Perspectives for Leadership. Imagine escaping just a really brutal, suffocating situation.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's a deeply toxic corporate culture you finally walked away from.
Right, or a bad partnership, something like that.
Exactly. Or a lifestyle that was just slowly destroying you, And you take the leap, the chains are off, but then like 30 days later, the reality of independence gets a little uncomfortable.
Oh yeah, reality hits.
Yeah, the budget gets tight, the past gets blurry, and suddenly you find yourself actively begging to go back to the very thing that was crushing you.
It's crazy how we do that.
It is. Why does the human brain do that?
Yeah.
So in this deep dive, we have a very specific mission. We are taking a fascinating ancient story found in the material we're looking at today. We're going to extract the leadership principles and everyday life applications that are just kind of hidden inside it. We want to understand how leaders, and well, really all of us, navigate those brutal seasons of intense ambiguity.
Yeah, that psychological whiplash is one of the most difficult things any leader will ever have to manage.
Yeah.
Either in their team or honestly in their own head. Because whether you're running a company or managing a family crisis or just trying to navigate a massive career pivot, you inevitably hit a phase where the map simply runs out.
Like you're off the edge of the map.
Exactly. The familiar resources you usually rely on, they just vanish, and you're left standing in a void.
Wow. Okay, so to really grasp the gravity of this, we need to look at the timeline in our source material. This story takes place approximately 1 month after the Israelites left Egypt.
Right, just 1 month.
Just a month.
Yeah.
Think about the sheer volume of supernatural activity this group of people has just witnessed. I mean, over a few short weeks, they watched the 10 plagues totally dismantle an empire.
Yeah.
They experienced the first Passover. They watched the Red Sea literally split open in front of them.
Which is just wild to think about.
Right. And then they saw Pharaoh's seemingly invincible army completely defeated by the collapsing water. And then just days ago, they saw bitter, undrinkable water miraculously purified at a place called Mara.
Right.
So massive, undeniable victories.
And that string of massive victories sets up a staggering geographic and psychological shift. The story notes that they have just left a place called Elim.
Elim, right?
Yeah, and Elim wasn't just a rest stop, it was a literal oasis.
Okay.
The material specifically mentions it boasted 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees.
Oh, wow.
So it was a place of highly visible, tangible abundance, but from that lush environment, they are moved directly into the wilderness of sin.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they transition overnight from a place where provision is obvious to a barren landscape where survival isn't just difficult, it seems impossible.
So you finally get your tent set up under a nice shady palm tree by a spring of water. You're kicking back.
They're finally relaxing.
Yeah, and suddenly the cloud moves and it's time to pack up and march right back into the scorching sand.
Exactly. And it establishes an overarching theme that anyone in a leadership role just desperately needs to internalize.
Which is what?
That following a calling doesn't mean every location is going to be comfortable.
Right.
In fact, if you're truly growing, it rarely is. The material highlights a profound reality here. The same leader, in this case God, who leads his people beside refreshing waters, also intentionally leads them into the wilderness.
Intentionally.
Yes. The ultimate goal isn't perpetual comfort. The goal is to deepen trust. Sometimes an environment has to become completely barren before an individual's reliance can become absolute.
Man. Which begs the question of the human nature, right? How do people react when they are ripped from a place of visible abundance and forced into the wilderness?
Well, they complain.
Yeah, according to the story, they do what most of us do. They look backward. Let me bring in the exact phrasing from the material. This is found in Exodus chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. It says, "The whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness." They essentially say, we wish to God we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt when we sat by the flesh pots and when we ate bread to the full.
Yeah, the human tendency to completely rewrite history kicks in almost the second their stomachs start rumbling.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this reaction is so visceral.
It really is.
I look at this, and it reminds me of someone coming off a powerful anesthetic after a major surgery.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Right, because while you're under the anesthesia, you don't feel the tumor, you don't feel the sickness, you're just numb. Then you wake up, the drugs wear off, and the surgical incision burns like fire.
Yeah, the pain hits you.
Yeah. And the natural human reaction is to think, oh, something is terribly wrong, I'm in agony, put me back to sleep.
Put me back under. Yeah.
But the pain isn't a sign that the surgery failed. The pain is a sign that you are finally awake and healing. The Israelites confused the temporary pain of healing in the wilderness with the permanent destruction of staying in Egypt.
What's fascinating here is how the material frames that psychological distortion.
Yeah.
Egypt, in this story, it represents a deeply entrenched system of bondage.
Right. They were slaves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Israel had physically left Egypt, yes. The border was crossed. But Egypt was still heavily dictating their mindset.
I see.
It highlights the massive difference between deliverance and transformation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, deliverance can happen in a single dramatic moment. Quitting the job, leaving the toxic relationship, crossing the Red Sea.
Right. The physical exit.
Exactly. But transformation, that is a slow, grueling process of reprogramming. Getting Israel out of Egypt took a night.
Yeah.
Getting Egypt out of Israel was going to take decades.
Decades. Wow.
Yeah.
So they remembered the food, but they conveniently hit delete on the slavery.
Total amnesia.
They remembered sitting by pots of boiling mead, but they completely forgot the whips coming down on their backs.
Yeah.
They were entirely willing to trade their newly won freedom for a guaranteed meal, even if it meant slipping the chains right back on their own wrists.
Because when the cost of freedom gets uncomfortable, bondage gets heavily romanticized.
Heavily romanticized, yeah. So for the listener who is navigating their own transition right now, there is a crucial everyday application here.
Definitely.
When you are in the messy middle of a change and your past starts looking deceptively appealing, you have to force yourself to write down the full, unedited story.
The whole story, yeah.
Don't just reminisce about the free office coffee at your old job or the predictable routine of a situation you outgrew.
Right.
Ask yourself the hard questions. What did staying in that situation actually cost my mental health?
Yeah.
What was I being protected from by leaving? The material offers a brilliant framing for this. Do not let a difficult season make you nostalgic for a destructive situation.
I love that. Because temporary discomfort can make permanent bondage look like a safe harbor, if you lose your grip on reality.
Exactly. But the nostalgia for the past, the whining about the flesh pots, that's just a symptom.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to apply strong leadership principles to this story, we have to play doctor for a minute and diagnose the actual disease beneath all this complaining.
Well, the story doesn't shy away from exposing that root cause. If we examine the very next part of the narrative, specifically in Exodus chapter 16, verses 2 through 4,
Okay.
we see the actual accusation being leveled.
What do they say?
The people aren't just saying they're hungry. They complain against Moses and Aaron, explicitly accusing their leaders of bringing them out into this wilderness to kill the entire assembly with hunger.
To kill them.
Yes. They are assigning murderous intent to the very people trying to guide them.
Now, I have to push back on this, or at least look at it from the ground level.
Sure.
I'm looking at their complaint, and it feels like there is a very distinct line they crossed here. Let's put ourselves in their sandals for a second.
Okay.
You're in a literal desert. The sun is beating down. You have children crying because their stomachs are empty. You're physically exhausted. Coming to your leader and saying, look, we are completely out of food and water. We need a solution.
Right.
That's just valid, necessary feedback.
It is.
But that's not what they did. Saying I'm starving is a fact. Saying you brought us out here to maliciously murder us, that's a direct attack on character.
And that distinction is everything. The material synthesizes it beautifully by drawing a hard line between healthy lament and unhealthy murmuring.
Healthy lament. Okay, what does that look like?
Lament is a deeply healthy, necessary part of the human experience.
Okay.
Lament is walking into your boss's office or falling on your knees in prayer and saying, I am hurting, I am terrified, our division has no budget left, and I do not understand how we are going to survive this quarter.
Just putting the facts on the table.
Right. It's an honest, raw expression of reality. Unhealthy murmuring, though, takes that same pain and weaponizes it.
Oh.
Murmuring says, because I am hurting, you must be incompetent. Or worse, you must be actively trying to destroy me.
Right. It jumps from, I have a problem, to you are the problem.
Exactly. And in doing so, it completely erases the leader's track record.
Yeah.
The Israelites weren't just bringing a supply chain issue to Moses' tent. Their complaint questioned the fundamental character of God, and it required them to suffer from sudden, profound amnesia regarding his entire recent resume.
Which is a pretty good resume.
It was. The parting of the Red Sea alone should have been enough foundational evidence to conclude that God hadn't orchestrated the greatest prison break in human history just to let them quietly starve in the sand.
Right. Like, why go through all that trouble?
Right. But in their panic, their present hunger totally obliterated their memory of past faithfulness.
Wow. Which tells us that while their struggle was undoubtedly physical, the root crisis was a crisis of trust.
A catastrophic failure of trust, honestly.
That is a harsh reality check. And there is an incredibly practical leadership application here for our listeners to absorb. Before you go to your manager or your spouse or your board of directors and start complaining about what is missing in your current season, you need to sit down and create a faithfulness list.
I like that, a faithfulness list.
Yeah. Actively rehearse past prayers that were answered against all odds. Document the doors that opened when you were completely stuck, the catastrophic dangers you miraculously avoided, the impossibly tight financial months you were somehow brought through.
Yeah.
The takeaway is profound. Your present need does not erase past faithfulness.
It doesn't. And gratitude doesn't mean you deny the reality of the current problem.
Right. You're still hungry.
You're still hungry. It just properly sizes the problem. It reminds your panicking brain that the current obstacle isn't bigger than the established track record of the one leading you.
Yeah.
I mean, if the sea opened behind you, the logical conclusion is that provision will appear in front of you.
So how does the ultimate leader respond to an entire organization experiencing this severe crisis of trust?
That's the real question.
Right. If you look at modern corporate leadership, the standard response would be damage control.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You call an all-hands meeting, you fire up a slide deck, you hand out a highly detailed 5-year strategic plan, and you show everyone exactly where the funding is coming from for the next 40 years so they calm down.
Right. Soothe the panic with data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that is the exact opposite of what happens in this story. God doesn't give them a roadmap. He completely alters the methodology of how they receive their resources.
The strategy pivots entirely toward enforced daily dependence.
Yeah. The story notes that God promises to rain bread from heaven.
Right.
But there is a massive catch. The people are commanded to gather it daily, just enough for that specific day. And here's where it gets really interesting. Think about how deeply we crave total certainty in our everyday lives.
Oh, we need it.
We do. We want the full annual budget approved and sitting in our account up front.
Yeah.
We want the 5-year career roadmap locked in and guaranteed. We want to know the outcome of the risk before we ever take the first step.
We want a sure thing.
But this ancient story introduces a system that fundamentally shatters that illusion of control. It completely removes their ability to stockpile security.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the manna, this miraculous bread from heaven, it served a dual purpose.
Okay, what were they?
Well, it was provision, absolutely, but it was also a highly calibrated test.
A test?
Yeah. The material provides a brilliant insight here. God explicitly states that he is providing the bread in this specific, restricted manner to test them, to see whether they will walk in his instruction.
Wow.
Providing food wasn't just about caloric intake. It was a mechanism meticulously designed to forge obedience.
Because if he drops a year's worth of grain on the camp all at once, they build silos, they start trading it, they build an economy, and they completely forget the provider.
Exactly. They would just recreate Egypt right there in the wilderness.
Oh, man, yeah.
God was aggressively deprogramming them. He was teaching Israel that their survival was no longer tied to the oppressive systems of Pharaoh, nor was it tied to their own frantic ability to hoard resources.
Right.
They had to learn on a cellular level that they were sustained by the faithfulness of God day by day, morning by morning.
We always want the leader to hand us the 10-year survival kit. Like, we want all the strength, all the money, and all the relational capital for the whole decade right now.
But the reality of strong leadership, both divine and human, is that you are frequently provided what you need just for the next immediate step.
Yeah.
You get strength for today's burden. You get wisdom for today's decision.
Practice daily dependence. And to help cultivate that, the material shares a highly practical tip. It lays out 3 specific questions we should ask ourselves every single morning to ground us in this manna mindset.
These are so good.
They really are. Number one, what has been given to me for today?
Yeah.
Number two, what is asked of me to obey today? And number three, what am I worrying about that actually belongs to tomorrow?
That third question is the one that really exposes our modern mindset.
It is an absolute gut punch. What am I worrying about today that belongs to tomorrow?
Yeah.
We spend an astonishing amount of our mental bandwidth time traveling into the future.
Constantly.
We sit at our desks trying to solve hypothetical problems that haven't even happened yet, borrowing anxiety from a future we can't control. And in the process, we completely overlook the provision sitting right in front of us.
Right.
We allow tomorrow's imaginary crises to bankrupt today's actual resources.
Which is exactly why the daily gathering mandate was so brilliant.
Yeah.
You couldn't gather tomorrow's manna today, and if you tried to hoard today's manna for tomorrow, the story says it literally rotted and bred worms.
Gross, but effective.
Very effective.
Yeah.
It forced physical and mental presence. It demanded that they engage entirely with the reality of today rather than being consumed by the anxiety of tomorrow.
By forcing this daily dependence, the narrative shifts beautifully. The wilderness stops being a place of mere deprivation. It transforms into a classroom. It becomes something highly valuable. The story tells us that Moses and Aaron promised the people that in the morning they will see the glory of the Lord.
The perspective shift required here is massive.
Yeah.
I mean, the Israelites looked at the barren sand and saw only a graveyard.
Just death. Yeah.
But God looked at that exact same barren environment and saw the perfect canvas to reveal his true nature.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now? Let's say someone is tuning into this deep dive and they feel utterly stranded in a barren season.
Yeah.
Maybe they were laid off, or their business is failing, or their personal life feels completely stripped of its usual comfort and resources. How do they shift their perspective based on the mechanics of this story?
They need to grasp the deep, undeniable connection between deprivation and revelation.
Okay, unpack that.
The material points out that the glory of God, the truest nature of the provider, is often revealed most clearly when human resources are completely exhausted. Think about their experience in Egypt. In Egypt, they could clearly see the food. They knew where it came from. They knew the cost of their labor to get it. Their eyes were fixed on the system.
Right, the human system.
Right. But in the wilderness, there was no visible food. There was no system. Because they couldn't see the provision, they were finally forced to see the provider.
It systematically strips away the illusion of self-sufficiency.
Completely. Because, when you have a massive financial safety net, it's incredibly easy to trust the net while claiming you trust the process.
Oh, that's so true.
But when the net vanishes, you actually learn what it means to trust the one holding you.
Yeah.
The wilderness is uniquely designed to reveal that your core identity isn't tied to your job title. It reveals that your inner peace isn't actually dependent on the approval of the people around you.
Right.
And your ultimate security isn't found in a diversified portfolio. A barren season might not be a punishment at all. It might be a period of intense, necessary preparation.
It's the only place where you truly learn that the presence of the leader is enough to sustain you, even when the external circumstances are chaotic and terrifying.
So instead of constantly asking, when am I going to get out of this miserable season?
Which is what we all ask.
Of course. But a much stronger, more mature leadership question is, what is being fundamentally revealed to me about myself, my coping mechanisms, and my ultimate source of provision while I am walking through this?
Man, that reframes the entire experience.
It really does.
It takes a season where you feel like a helpless victim of your circumstances and turns it into a master class in resilience, trust, and character development.
Yeah.
The wilderness isn't empty if you know what you're looking for.
What feels like a barren wasteland to our comfort-addicted minds is very often the birthplace of our greatest clarity.
Wow. This has been such a dense, rich exploration of the material today. If we were going to summarize the core themes we've pulled from this ancient story, they hit hard.
Very hard.
First, freedom does not eliminate difficulty. Making the right choice to leave a toxic situation doesn't mean the new path will be lined with palm trees.
No, it doesn't.
Second, true deliverance requires learning dependence. You have to actively unlearn the toxic survival skills you picked up while you were in bondage.
Yes.
And third, do not go backward, simply because moving forward feels unfamiliar and scary.
The unfamiliarity of freedom will almost always feel more terrifying than the predictability of bondage.
Yeah.
At least in the beginning, Your brain wants the predictable pain of Egypt over the unpredictable provision of the wilderness.
It's wild, but it's true.
You have to fight that urge and just trust the process.
The final takeaway for us today is simple, but incredibly powerful. The God who brought you out knows exactly how to keep you while He is bringing you through.
Yes.
You don't have to manage the entire 10-year journey today. You just have to gather today's provision, make today's decisions, and trust that tomorrow's manna will be there when the sun comes up.
It demands a complete rewiring for anyone who is used to white-knuckling their way through life on their own strength.
It really does. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to hand it over for one final thought.
Okay.
Based on everything we've unpacked from the material today, what is a provocative question the listener can take with them to mull over as they go back to leading their teams, managing their families, and facing their own daily challenges?
I would leave everyone with this to consider. If this material shows us that our greatest growth, our deepest trust, and our clearest revelation come directly from the wilderness,
Right.
Those uncomfortable times when we are stripped of our usual resources and forced into daily dependence,
Yeah.
are we as corporate leaders, as parents, and as friends unintentionally stunting the growth of the people we lead by constantly trying to make
Thank
their
you for joining
environments
us on the
comfortable?
Biblical Perspectives for Leadership podcast. I hope today's insights have encouraged and equipped you to lead with faith, wisdom, and purpose. Remember, the greatest leader of all time taught us that true leadership is about serving others. If you enjoyed this episode and podcast, be sure to subscribe, share it with others, and leave a review. It helps us reach more people with these transformative truths. Until next time, keep leading with grace and walking in purpose.